ni apa ke ni?
Baru belajar bab 5 ni. So
7-8 baru Aziz. Tu pun roommate paksa orang suruh orang belajar. Kalau tak belajar dah. Kalau kita
Biasalah sukan ni. Kita
tu
tak belajar lagi.
Orang pun tak mikir kan ni kan nak belajar ni. Berapa makan dia weh?
Teh banyak juga makan dia. 30% gitu lah.
Banyak kalah tu. Kan nak ingat makan tu ya Allah. Tahu tak Lena?
Ya, orang harap lah ada penyelamat untuk kita selesaikan masalah kita ni.
Oh kalau Maya tu doa tu weh. Ikut saya. Jangan syaitan dirajim. Ya Allah Tuhanku. Kau turunkanlah penyelamat kepada kami.
Awak panggil saya? Korang perlukan bantuan?
Cik Na nak tolong kita lah.
Serius Cik Na?
Cik Na boleh tak ajar kita orang bab 1, 2, 3, 4, 9 dengan 10. Sebab 5 dengan 6, lepas tu 7, 8 kita dah baca dah sikit-sikit.
Boleh. Tapi ada satu syarat. Korang mesti betul-betul fokus dan bagi perhatian sepenuhnya dengan apa yang Cik Na nak terangkan nanti. Jangan main phone tau.
What is philosophy? Philosophy is the systematic study of ideas and issue, a reasonable pursuit of fundamental truth, a quest for a comprehensive understanding of the world, and a study of principle of conduct. Philosophy engage in asking, answering, and arguing. Objective of philosophy: first, rational justification; second, human value; third, criteria for establishing of knowledge; and fourth, interpretation of nature of reality. The field of philosophy. First, philosophy examines concept and view drawn from science, art, religions, and politics. Philosophy divided into two major areas. First, traditional subfield of philosophy. Second, special field of philosophy. The history of philosophy. Explore the ideas, seeking to understand the way in which people to answer. Significant part of philosophy is its history insight into other subfield of philosophy. Argument and answer often motivate the study of philosophy. Philosophical questions arise in almost every discipline. The uses of philosophy. First, general problem solving. Second, communication skills. Third, persuasive powers. Fourth, writing skills. Fifth, the uses in philosophy in educational pursuits. And lastly, the uses of philosophy in non-academic careers. That's all from What is Philosophy by Chapter 1. What is science? Science is what scientists do. Modern definition of science: the system of acquiring knowledge based on empirism, experimentation, and methodological naturalism. Science can be characterized as a method of obtaining knowledge. Science is often used to refer to the community of science and researchers who do not scientific works. Science and technology. Things are changing and accelerating at an change this rapid is new for humanity. However, science can't cause changes unless something is done with the knowledge it uncovers. Technology is the application of scientific knowledge. The basic structure of science. To properly understand the contemporary philosophy of science, the components of science are data and theories. The components of science is a discipline that deals with the system of science itself. It examines science structures, components, techniques, assumptions, limitations, and so forth. Field of science. First, natural science. Second, formal science. Third, social science. And lastly, applied science. And that's all for Chapter 2.
Macam itulah penerangan bab 1 dengan bab 2. Tak susah pun, senang je.
Macam tu ke? Sini. Cik Nah, macam mana bab 3 dan 4 pula?
Oh, nak tahu bab 3 dan 4? Jom kita tengok TV.
Hai adik-adik, bersama saya lagi Kak Hajar dalam rancangan Jom Belajar Philo di Philo Tutor TV. Philo bukan Philo ya. Adik-adik, minggu ni kita akan belajar bab 3 dan 4. Jadi, mari kita teruskan.
Okey, dalam chapter 3 kita akan belajar tentang scientific method. Scientific method, apa itu scientific method? Scientific method refers to technique for investigate phenomena, acquiring new knowledge dan integrating previous knowledge. Scientific method ni dia melibatkan data collection, yang mana data collection ini terdiri daripada observation dan juga experimentation. Kemudian dia juga melibatkan formulation and testing the hypothesis. Okay, what is science? Science berasal daripada perkataan Latin iaitu scientia yang bermaksud knowledge. Sudut daripada bahasa Arab pula, ia dikenali sebagai ilm yang bermaksud sains. Okey, berdasarkan bahasa Melayu tradisional, sains dikenali sebagai mystical knowledge and religion. Okey, science is a project whose goals is to obtain knowledge of the natural world. Dan the philosophy of science adalah disiplin that deals with the system of science itself. Okay, basic structure of science. Science terdiri daripada data, theories and shaping principle. Okay, what is science? Science ni terbahagi kepada dua, iaitu science secara objektif dan subjektif. Okay, sains melalui subjektif. Okay, objektif is not influenced by personal feeling, while subjective it influenced by personal feelings. Next, objective not depend on mind for existence, while for subjective it depend on the mind for existence. Okay, next, objective believe that moral truths exist independently of human knowledge, while subjective is based on religions. And the last one, for objective, it emphasizes what is external to or independent of the mind. History of scientific method. Ancient Egyptian terkenal dengan medical diagnosis, manakala Al-Hazin telah mendevelop experimental scientific method di dalam buku Books of Optics. Francis Bacon telah memperkenalkan new system of logic iaitu Novum Organon, manakala René Descartes telah memperkenalkan scientific method iaitu Discourse on Method. Okay, early method. Early method, Edwin Smith menyatakan Papyrus applied the basic components of scientific method. Dan Babylonian and Egyptian terkenal dengan technical knowledge, craft and mathematics. Dan Greeks merupakan earliest form of modern science. Aristotle, scientific tradition. Okey, Ibnu Al-Haytham telah memperkenalkan scientific method melalui pertama, statement of the problem, kedua, testing, ketiga, interpretations of data dan keempat, publication. Al-Biruni merupakan the earliest experimental method for mechanics. Al-Biruni said scientific method, universals came out of practical, experimental work and theories and formulated after discoveries. Ibn Sina said that scientific method, general and universal question come first and lead to experimental work. Element of scientific method. Elemen scientific method ni terdiri daripada characterization, hypothesis, prediction dan juga eksperimen. Evaluation and iteration, sekiranya develop hypothesis tidak berjaya, apa yang perlu kita buat adalah kita perlu redefine the subject. Kemudian sekiranya hypothesis kita fail, kita perlu reconsiderations of the hypothesis. Kemudian sekiranya eksperimen kita fail, kita perlu reconsidering the experimental method. Communication, Research, Community and Culture. Okey, terdiri daripada peer review evolution. Peer review evolution ni to keep the scientific literature free of errors, unscientific work can improve the quality. Kemudian documentation and replication boleh dilakukan melalui pertama, repeat the experiments, kedua, achieving, ketiga, de-achieving dan keempat, limitation. Okay, chapter 4 kita akan belajar tentang scientific reasoning. Okay, Western Science. Western Science telah memperkenalkan principle of parsimony, iaitu things are usually connected in simplest or most economical way. Kedua, wahyu is not recognized as knowledge to the West. Okay, wahyu ni tidak dikira sebagai ilmu pengetahuan kepada orang barat. Yang ketiga, scientific knowledge cannot be used to study spiritual world or the essence and characteristics of God. Analysis and reductionism. Analysis. What is analysis? Analysis is the activity of breaking down an observation or theory into simpler concept in order to understand it. Okay, reduction. Reduction we can have several different senses. Menurut Clement Dennett, 1995, he have invented the term greedy reductionism to show that reductionism was possible. Islamic science. Islamic science is a knowledge and facts that can be evaluated and perceived by the human senses. Okay, the mind, that is akal, is a tool to provide conclusion and evaluation. Islamic science versus secularisms. Based on Science and Muslim Society by Nassim Bad, and there are 10 Islamic values, that is Tauhid, Khilafah, Ibadah, Ilm, Halal, Haram, Zalim, and kemaslahatan umum dan juga kecerobohan.
Adik-adik, nampaknya masa telah mencemburui kita ni. Jadi kita bertemu lagi di minggu hadapan. Bye.
Best kan tengok TV tadi?
Best.
Baguslah macam tu. Ada apa-apa lagi yang saya boleh bantu?
Rasanya tak ada apa-apa lagi kan, Zee?
Lah Su, rasanya kita boleh revise sendiri kan?
Itulah. Thank you, Cik Na.
Sama-sama.
Aziz, Aziz kan dah habis kan 5 dan 6? Ajar.
Jom. Boleh. Okay, Mei ajar.
Kata nak ajar. Apa tengok atas? Tengoklah bawah, buku dah bawah ni.
Apa, tengok je lah. Tengok.
Overview for Chapter 5. Introduction. Philosophy of science divided by two areas. First, the process of scientific research. Second, discovery and the fruits of the process. Nature and scientific concept. From the statement of Sir Karl Raymond Popper, he differs the science and non-science. Most of the philosophers in 20th century wrote about the social and political philosophy. He also known for repudiating the scientific method. Scientific realism versus scientific anti-realist. For realism, he claimed science aims at truth and ought to regard scientific theory as true. Point the success of recent scientific theories as evidence for the truth. For anti-realists, argue science aims not at truth and not regard scientific theory as true. Point to either the history of science, epistemic moral, the success of false assumption. Philosophy of particular science. Philosophy of physics. The study of fundamental matter and energy and how they interact. Nature of space and time, atom and atomism, cosmology, and nature of physical law. Philosophy of biology deals in epistemological, metaphysical, and ethical issues in biological and biomedical science. Neo-Darwinism discovered structure of DNA in 1953. Two more recent advances in genetic engineering. The philosophers examine practices, theories, and concepts of biology as scientific discipline. Philosophy of mathematics. The study of philosophical assumptions, foundations, and implications of math. The Western philosophers of math. Plato, ontological status of mathematics object. Aristotle, logic and issues related to infinity. The Greek philosophy influenced by their study of geometry. For example, Pythagoras. Philosophy of chemistry. To consider the methodology and underlying assumption of the science. The question is, quantum reality at the microcosmic level and distance between electrons and the atomic nucleus. Philosophers of science. Plato, a Greek philosopher, a mathematician, writer of philosophical dialogues, and founder of academy in Athens. Aristotle, a creator of the comprehensive system of Western philosophy. Physical science, modern physics, biological science, and formal logic. Ibn al-Haytham, the philosopher of principles of optics, anatomy, engineering, mathematics, medicine, physics, psychology, and visual perception. He also known as Al-Basri. Galileo Galilei, a physicist, mathematician, astronomer, and philosopher. He also a father of modern observational astronomy, modern physics, and modern science. And the last one is Isaac Newton. He is a mathematician, an English physicist, natural philosopher, alchemist, astronomer, and theologian. He also described universal gravitation and 3 laws of motion. That's all about the chapter 5. Overview chapter 6. Scientific institutions and fields of Muslim scholars. Introduction. Islamic science was developed under Islamic civilization between 8th until 16th century. At that time, lack of intellectual caused the revolution. Schools and universities, college universities, professors' chair, and formal Islamic education institution. Scientific institution. Barimastam Medical University is the first university issued diploma. University of Al-Qarawiyyin in Fez, Morocco, is the oldest university in the world. Modern Islamic library is the function of collection of manuscript, center of instruction, and meeting and discussion. Born universal geniuses such as Al-Biruni, Al-Farabi, Ibn Sina, and Al-Hindi. Natural science. It divided into 3 parts. First, agriculture, chemistry, and natural phenomena. Formal science. Mathematics and trigonometry. Social science. It has 6 parts. First, psychology. Second, Islamic civilization. Third, maps, travelers and explorers. Fourth, geography. Fifth, trade. And sixth, social science and economy. Applied science. Coffee, engineering, Al-Jazari, medicine, hospital, medicine and health. That's all from chapter 6.
Super tak? Gitu je bab 5 bab ni. Peh? Oh gitu ke? Peh. So kita dah study bab 7 dengan 8. Ajar lagi pula.
Meh nak ajar? Oh, tengok atas. Ni, sini. Meh, tengok sini.
Kata nak ajar. Okay, macam tadi ke?
Dok, kita guna buku je. Senin. Gini.
Now we look at chapter 7, Classification of Religious Science. In Islamic civilization, Al-Farabi, knowledge is about the existing. Its mission is heading toward the truth, and the people are same. Al-Ghazali, the religious knowledge give a lot of benefit to people. Islamic values. There are 5 Islamic values we must practice in our life. First, wajib. Second, sunat. Third, harus. Fourth, makruh. And fifth, haram. In our country, philosopher is usually hakim. Tasawwuf as philosopher knowledge. Tarikat as disiplin. Disiplin is to contribute patuh kepada perintah Allah dan meninggalkan segala larangannya. Al-Quran dan As-Sunnah adalah sebagai pegangannya. Sekarang kita mendalami makna tasawuf. Untuk taubat. Itu taubat pada zahir dan batin. Syad, hati yang suci dan bersih. Itu hati selesa mengingati Allah. Tidak materialistik dan tiada hasad dengki. Wa, wilayah. Kesucian datang dari hati, iaitu ikhlas. Fa, fana. Dunia adalah tempat persinggahan sementara kita. Hanya kebaikan saja akan dikira di sini dan keburukannya akan mendapat pembalasan. Step to return to the origin. Who is origin? Origin is Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala for Muslim. There are 4 steps to return to the origin. First, syariat. Second, tarikat. Third, marifah. Fourth, hakikat. Syariat is following the religious precepts, and tarikat to eliminate the multiplicity of ego himself, to reach the unity and come close to his creator. Marifah is effort to reach the state of divine wisdom to know his Lord, and hakikah to total closeness to Allah, to the knowledge of truth. Intuition. Only few scientists use intuition to solve the scientific problem. Reason why? Intuition can be learned or taught. The scientists use this method in the early of the experiment of research occur based on one's experience. Intuition is a belief that denies existence of science and ideology from mind and emotion, and deny that theory will create social and nature. That's all for chapter 7. Then we'll move on chapter 8. In chapter 8, intellectual science. In Hellenistic age, Socratic method asks questions to people, find the consistency and contradiction of proposition, and reason is to know one's weaknesses. When he became well known, he was seen as a threat to society. He was poisoned until death, and because he did not change his ideology. Plato, Socrates' student, first philosopher who judged in all aspects, being, knowing, and acting. Aristotle, study of nature and study about knowing himself deeply. Change must have a purpose, according to Aristotle. But Darwin, changes must have occur randomly. Stoicism is philosophy for hard kind. It's about the self-control and control attitude, behavior, and emotion. It's life for social responsibility. Epicurus is different from Stoicism. Epicurus is life for freedom. Scan things that prevent them from freedom, such as marriage. Skeptics believe that we do not know the truth, so we must not depend on sense and people's statements to find the truth. We must do some research to know about the truth. Modern science. Skepticism. Scientists do research to conclude a conclusion of fact based on the hypothesis. Scientist is not a philosopher who can accept everything. In the Christian age, people free to choose, but they can't blame God for the mistake. Influenced by mystic asceticism and gnostic. In Dark Age of Europe, when men were superstitious and the advances of Greece and Rome had disappeared. The fall of the Roman Empire. In In 2002, Europe came under a single currency. The church is banned the study of certain ideas or texts it felt run contrary to scripture. Moralizing. Science is disappeared in Europe. Mysticism was tied to science until the age of enlightenment. Men will be murdered by the Inquisition in the name of protecting the church from science and blackouts. The importance of Renaissance, turning point in the history of the West, marking a shift from a religious to a scientific worldview. Enlightenment Age, new development in rationalism and empirical science philosophers in restructuring French society. By end of the 18th century, France became a republic, not a monarchy. The end for chapter 8.
Gitulah bab 7 dengan bab 8. Faham? Faham. Tapi kan bab 9 dengan bab 10 tak kira penyelaman. Ada kali kedua pula.
Itulah. Aku tak apa kena. Hazi, dengar tak tu? Ni apa tu? Tu, ni tu.
Buat apa tu?
Kami sebenarnya
Tengah study Philo.
Buat berapa tu?
baru nak masuk bab 9.
Bab 9? Mai aku tolong.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. Untuk chapter 9, The Contribution of Islam Towards Science and Technology. Untuk bahagian pertama, menerangkan kenapa dunia Islam gagal mencapai kemajuan dalam sains dan teknologi. Pertama, gagal untuk menggunakan sains dan mengkaitkan dengan alam sekitar. Yang kedua, gagal untuk mengaplikasikan ilmu dalam mencipta produk di pasaran. Untuk tajuk 9.2 pula menceritakan tentang zaman kegemilangan Islam yang terdiri dari dua faktor. Yang pertama, ketinggian menghormati sesuatu ilmu dan mempraktikannya. Yang kedua, sifat ingin tahu yang mendalam untuk mengkaji fenomena alam. Tajuk 9.3 memberitahu bahawa banyak pihak media yang menyiarkan berita palsu tanpa mengenal pasti kebenaran terhadap Islam. Manakala tajuk 9.4 menghuraikan tanggapan orang barat terhadap orang Islam, antaranya orang Islam kebanyakannya orang Arab di timur negara timur. Yang kedua, Islam agama yang terlalu fanatik, ganas dan poligami, dan banyak lagi. Tajuk 9.5 menerangkan zaman kejatuhan teknologi Islam dan Han memberikan beberapa perkara yang mesti orang Islam hadapi dan selesaikan. Pertama, kurang persefahaman. Yang kedua, kurangnya pembabitan universiti dalam bidang sains. Yang ketiga, kurang sumbangan dan kemudahan dalam mengkaji dan membangun. Yang keempat, kurang infrastruktur industri. 9.6 Malaysia a living example. Secara asasnya, slide 9.6 menceritakan pembangunan yang dilakukan oleh Malaysia untuk dalam sains dan teknologi. Yang pertama, mengutamakan pengenalpastian dan penetapan kajian kepada sektor awam. Yang kedua, penetapan dalam sektor yang penting untuk agriculture, industri dan kesihatan. Yang ketiga, hubungan baik terhadap sains dan teknologi antara universiti, institusi kajian dan sektor bukan awam. Yang terakhir, aktiviti mengkaji dan memajukan diadakan di pihak yang lebih tinggi dalam pendidikan. Sekian, terima kasih.
Faham? Bagus lah korang dah faham. Aku nak balik ni. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam. Hazi, bab 9 kita faham dah. Bab 10 gana pula.
Itulah bab 10 ni tak kira orang nak mengajar kita lagi. Kita lah pula kena pergi cari orang ke.
Itulah. Tapi siapa
Itulah.
Sefikir tak gambar Hazi fikir? Super fikir gambar Hazi fikir.
Aina! Kenapa?
Kita nak minta tolong ni untuk Philo bab 10.
Korang nak tahu apa?
Bab 10 ada apa je?
Bab 10 ada pasal Muhammad Iqbal, Development Science Technology dengan Umat Sultan. Korang nak tahu apa?
Semua boleh.
Semua.
Boleh. Jadi marilah kita tengok slide seterusnya.
Chapter 10 is about three important things: Muhammad Iqbal, Science and Technology, and Ummatan Wasatan. Who is Muhammad Iqbal? He is a well-known poet and philosopher who has achieved many amazing things. He believes that a truly dynamic and healthy society believes in change. He criticizes both Europe and the Muslim world for their failures in this respect. He criticizes Europe's failure as theory and practice of its collective life is no longer regulated by eternal principles, while Muslim is criticized because of their rigid understanding of eternal principles, which has caused them to exclude the possibilities of change, resulting in immobility during the last 500 years. This is why ijtihad, which generally means creativity of the human mind, is important in implementing change. Muhammad Iqbal agreed that ijtihad should rebuild the law of Sharia in the light of modern thought and experience. A truly dynamic society will view change in the light of what is permanent and eternal. Another interesting view of Muhammad Iqbal is that mankind has been created to be conscious of being a free self, capable of doubt and disobedience. Freedom is therefore essential to the development of his personality, as it is also the necessary condition of goodness. Iqbal defines human freedom as the freedom to choose good in preference to evil, and the ultimate freedom is spiritual, which the human self attains through the act of prayers. For the development of science and technology, here are some key points in understanding this subtopic. First, interaction with an advanced society generally stimulates progress without sacrificing the fundamentals of faith. For example, Israel, which has the highest per capita research and development personnel, ensures that make sure that their rabbis are highly literate in science and technology as well as other worldly subjects. The second point is the Muslim people and our religious leaders should not be isolated from science, technology, and development. So Islam and Islamic civilization cannot adopt modern science seriously without rejection as well as absorption. Total rejection of the Western science has already retarded the late 20th century progress of Islamic Ummah. Now, the fundamental question in this context is whether the so-called Western science is good or evil in its usage, and not whether it is Islamic or un-Islamic. In order to uplift the world of Islamic science, Muslim scientists must master the modern science and technology, but within the bounds of Islamic principles. Muslims should not stay away from adopting or diffusing technologies of the East or West for the benefits of Ummah. Now, in order to achieve excellence, Muslims do not separate matter from the spirit, mind from the body, and means from the end. This means that Muslims treat their work in a holistic and integrated manner. The concept of Tawheed forms the underlying principle of work that any Muslims should undertake, as it has a great influence on the type of scientific activities that Muslim scientists should work on. The third and last subtopic, Ummatan Wasatan or Middle Nation. It is Islam's destiny to be a civilizational bridge between East and West, which befits Islam's interest in the idea of universal civilization. This will be explained in the following categories. If we look at the present geographical map of the world, we can see the Muslim world is sandwiched between China, Korea, and Japan to the east, and Europe to the west, between Russia to the north, and Africa and Australasia to the south. The idea of Islam as a middle nation can be found in Al-Quran. Says the Quran, "Thus have we made you a middle nation that you might be witnesses over the whole human family or the world community." Surah Al-Baqarah, ayat 143. The idea of middleness brings about a meaning that is applicable to the human culture and civilization. In politics, Islam strikes a middle position between the very much hated theocracy and secular modern democracy, originated in the West, and implements its own concept of Islamic democracy, which seeks the right of God and the rights and duties of men. In economics, Islam strikes a balance between the secular capitalism of what used to be the Free West and the atheistic socialism of the Communist bloc. In theology, Islam seeks to synthesize the idea of a transcendent God and that of an immanent God. In social institutions, Islam is somewhere between not allowing divorce altogether and a belief adopted by many in the West that marriage is not a sacred institution. In philosophy, Islam has struck a balance between extreme forms of rationalism and empiricism. In conclusion, Ummatan Wasatan shows that in Islam's spiritual teachings and historical unfolding, Islam has played the role of a civilization bridge between East and West and between North and South. And that is all you need to know for this chapter.
Jadi korang dah faham bab 10?
Faham sangat-sangat.
Kalau macam tu, saya balik dulu. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Jadi sampai di sini sahaja review Philo kita pada hari ini.
Harapkan segala input dan maklumat yang diberikan dapat dimanfaatkan dan diaplikasikan untuk final exam kita nanti.